Getcha. You're on vacation in Kentucky, and a local blue duck salesman approaches you and says, "Hey, are you interested in buying 5 blue ducks?" Yeah. You fool. It's illegal to purchase less than 6. You're on vacation in Idaho, and a local oversized candy salesman approaches you and says, "Hey, are you interested in buying a 51-pound box of candy for your fiancé?" Yeah. Hit me. You fool. 50 pounds is the legal limit. You're on vacation in Indiana, and a local horse salesman approaches you and says, "Hey, are you interested in buying a horse that can only run at exactly 11 miles per hour?" Yeah. Giddy up. You fool. 10 miles per hour is the legal limit. The third one?
Okay, let's see if I remember this level.
Why were Spartan women so rich? As we discussed in a previous video, the Vikings had surprisingly progressive laws regarding women's rights, but the
Minecraft item facts you possibly didn't know. Once you play in creative mode, it's clear to see that Minecraft is full of items. So today we're joined by blog facts to cover the Minecraft item facts that you might have missed. It's possible to subscribe and like the video at the same time. So if you want to prove that's a myth, simultaneously slap those 2 buttons below. It's free and it helps out a ton. Number 1, landing a shot with a bow and arrow is easier said than done. However, it looks like the game might be partially to blame. See, if you were to stand close to a wall and fire off several shots without moving, you'll notice that the arrows fall slightly to the right of your crosshair. And if you change to left-handed in the settings, it's the opposite, which I guess makes some sense. Number 2, Minecraft has plenty of resources to craft with. But have you ever wondered which item gets the most use? Well, turns out the iron ingot takes the top slot at 34 crafting recipes.
Oh,
With
yeah.
right behind it, 33.
Untitled
While I would have guessed that
Chapter.
those were the other way around, it's still plenty of a reason to get yourself both an iron and a tree farm in the future.
Number 3, ender pearls can be a real lifesaver, especially when you're traveling in the end. Or they would be if I could get the angle right, but training that arc isn't always easy. Though it turns out that ender pearls and snowballs can be thrown at the same range, meaning we can figure out our trajectory before losing any hearts. And that extra prep makes all the difference.
Number 4, unfortunately, the Bedrock Edition doesn't allow for all items to be held in the offhand. But that doesn't mean every offhand item has a use. The Nautilus shields, for example. For us, they do nothing in either slot. But the reason they work like this is because the drowned mobs have to hold them like so. So it is useless, but it's at least a fun detail.
Number 5, if you've ever fought the Wither, you're familiar with its second phase. That being, when you see these particles, it's your cue to switch from a bow to a sword. Or it would be if we didn't have fireworks. See, by loading these into a crossbow, we can still damage the Wither with its armor, and that lets us finish the fight from a safe distance.
Number 6, if you can get your hands on a Totem of Undying, it's an invaluable resource to have. But it does mean we give up an offhand slot to make it work. Though, for what it's worth, the 3DS version of Minecraft lets the Totem work in any of the hotbar slots, since there's no offhand feature in that version, which is nice, but I'd rather stick to PC.
Number 7, if you've messed around with Minecraft's paintings, you've probably seen this before. And while the skull on fire is not only iconic, it also contains a neat detail. The background of the shot is actually a screenshot from Minecraft Alpha, and more surprisingly, a team actually found the seed from this screenshot and recreated it years later, which is some crazy dedication for sure.
Number 8, Minecraft enchantments are a great thing, but they don't always make sense. And while it's weird to use a fire aspect book for lighting TNT, I think it's even stranger that we can put mending on a carrot on a stick. But if you've got the levels, I'm sure the pigs appreciate it. Though, I still can't get over the image of a regenerating carrot. Number 9, when you're exploring in Minecraft, we all know to pack a bunch of food, yet somehow I still never seem to bring enough. And would you believe it, that was even worse in the beta versions of Minecraft, since back then, only the cookies would stack. And even then, you could only have up to 8 of them in a given stack. And thankfully nowadays, we've got much better pockets for our pork.
Number 10, why don't Wither skeletons carry bows like the others? Well, this might be our answer, since when we spawn in one of these with a bow like so, Thankfully, the developers decided not to add another fire-shooting mob to the nether, but for a custom difficulty, this would fit right in.
Number 11. Minecraft doesn't have a lot of flying mobs, and I think that's a missed opportunity. So to change that around, we can do so with the help of elytras. See, with commands, you can actually attach elytras to certain mobs, but it won't do anything until we set the fall flying tag to 1B. At that point, we can let them glide around and launch our first ever Minecraft mob airlines.
Number 12. Even though Minecraft's a sandbox, the game still has some given rules, like how you can only type 16 characters for the title of a book and quill. That is when typed like this. But through the help of an anvil, we can circumnavigate the limit and get a much longer title. And I can think of some books that need just that.
Number 13. Back in 2014, Microsoft famously purchased Mojang for a chunk of cash. So while we're all familiar with the Windows 10 version of Minecraft, did you know that there were Minecraft versions of Windows 10? Sure enough, 5 updates for Windows 10 were codenamed Red. $5 billion for that reference.
Number 14. To speed up game development, it's nice to cut corners when you can. And Minecraft's textures have plenty of examples of that. But what's weirder still is which they decide to reuse and which they make from scratch. Like, the bucket of cod and bucket of tropical fish are recolorations, but the item sprites themselves are different. And I don't get why you'd only do half the assignment.
Number 15. Diamonds are the quintessential rare item in Minecraft's overworld. But for a time, there was something even rarer. See, when they were added, cocoa beans weren't exactly renewable, meaning the only ones you could get were from a lucky exploration trip. And that, folks, meant that they existed on a smaller part of the map than the diamond ore. So I hope those cookies are made worth it.
Number 16. At some point, I think we've all heard Minecraft's music discs. And even though some are better than others, they've each got a unique identity. And I'd say that disc 11 definitely fits that description. While it's a bit of a chore to listen to it all, you might not have noticed that it lasts for 1 minute, 11 seconds, and 111 milliseconds exactly. All of it absolutely dreadful.
Number 17. Clearly, in a game called Minecraft, you're gonna have a bunch of crafting recipes, which makes it all the weirder when some of them get removed in later updates. Take horse armor, for example. When initially added back in the snapshot 13W16A, they had crafting recipes like so, but just 24 days later, they were removed. So I guess we'll have to stick to Fortress Chest to get our supply.
Number 18. Bone meal is a surprisingly powerful tool, and as someone who doesn't like waiting, it's essential for me. But apparently it's more robust than even I thought. While we're all familiar with bone meal on the top of a grass block, it can also work from the sides and bottom. It'll even work if a plant is already on top, making this super substance even easier to use.
Number 19. If you've messed around with Minecraft modding, you know there are plenty of files to sort through. And hidden in those files are some sneaky details. For instance, did you know that axes were originally referred to as hatchets in the game's code? But since Java 1.13, the language files now reflect the current name. But since the axes are still one-handed, I can see it either way.
Number 20. Basically everything in Minecraft has more of a use than the furnace minecarts. And for this reason, Mojang explicitly didn't add it to the Bedrock and 3DS versions of the game. Jeb even mentioned removing them outright from the Java edition. So unless they decide to make these trains actually usable, it's only a short while before this joins the forgotten ranks of Beast Boy and Frog Girl.
Number 21. If you want to buff your crossbow, then a quick charge enchantment is a must-have. And hey, if you want more Minecraft facts, then a subscription's a must-have too. Thank you, by the way. But even with that, I wouldn't push it too far, because it turns out that quick charge level 6 and above pauses the animation on the first frame. Since the resulting reload time is now negative, the game can't even start the animation to load. But even if it could, it would take over 69 years to finish that. And at that point, your opponent's probably moved on.
Number 22. You don't have to play creative mode for long to come across these spawn eggs. I mean, there's a lot of them. But while we're familiar with how they look nowadays, they didn't always seem that way. In fact, back in the snapshots of 1.1, they were each sourced from one file that was tinted for the variations. And I'm glad they decided to change.
Number 23. Finding the best fuel source can be something of a math problem. But if you're on Bedrock, you should know that bowls are a more efficient fuel source than sticks. Since 6 planks craft into 8 bowls to smelt 8 items, instead of crafting 12 sticks to smelt only 6. And this will be a big help for when you're trying to smelt down the stem blocks next time you're in the nether.
Number 24. Minecraft's apples have a bit of a weird history. For starters, the original texture wasn't even for Minecraft, but rather a previous game by the game's creator called Legend of the Chambered. And while that texture was changed in the texture update, that's not the end of this guy's association with apples. Since to this day, if you kill him, he'll drop an apple with his other items. Number 25. With so many items to collect, it's only fair we have some way to show them off. And while item frames are a staple in the way that we decorate nowadays, prior to this Reddit post, it wasn't even considered. But sure enough, just like the ender chest in the Tower Pod, item frames made it in through a community suggestion. And thankfully so, I might add.
Number 26. Clearly, TNT can pack quite a punch. But when you do damage here, it's even more serious when we add it to a cart. As it turns out, all it takes is a direct hit from 3 merged TNT minecart hearts to take a full diamond armor player right down to half a heart. And though other methods can deal more damage, I'd rather just spend the ingots and get this cheap fix.
Number 27. According to Mojang's official write-up, they don't currently plan to add in more community-made mods or features. But while that's true for now, it wasn't always the case. And in fact, the sound you hear here was actually inspired by a third party. While playing on the PvP server Project Ares, Dinabo noticed the high-pitched sound and added it into the bows we use today.
Number 28. Gold tools aren't exactly known for their durability. Or rather, they are, but not for good reason. But have you ever wondered just how bad they are? Well, apparently it only takes one snow golem to find out. See, if you take the snow under a snow golem's feet, your golden shovel won't even last 4 seconds before it shatters. And I know gold's soft in real life, but snow is too, so that just seems pathetic.
Number 29. Every great artist tends to sign their work, and apparently Minecraft textures are no different. Though I wouldn't blame you if you never noticed the hidden autographs on the armor stand, since they aren't visible on any part of the item or entity. But look at the texture file, and sure enough, both Sarge and Japper have their names right here on the bottom, hidden from plain view.
Number 30. Nowadays, shields are a necessity for PvP, but it turns out there's something even better, or at least there will be. Seeing the separate combat test snapshots, Mojang currently has a change that will allow shields with banners to have more absorption, giving 10 instead of 5. And while this will likely be replaced with actual shield variants in the final run, for right now, a little banner goes a long way.
Number 31. How would you classify a saddle? I mean, it's definitely a utility, but I wouldn't consider it armor. Minecraft, however, seems to disagree, since when you put a saddle on a pig, it counts as armor, but adds no protection. That's why you can see it when the pig goes invisible. But interestingly, the same doesn't apply to a horse, but only to horse armor. Weird.
Number 32. Sometimes Mojang makes a change that doesn't seem all that important. And while there might be room for discussion on that, this one's hard to argue. See, prior to 1.16.2, Pufferfish 1 even gave the player nausea to effect. But since then, it's only nausea 1. Though since the level in nausea doesn't impact the effect's potency, it really doesn't make much difference.
Number 33. Minecraft has its fair share of rare items. It turns out that there are even rarer names. In vanilla, there are only 3 items obtainable in survival with a magenta tinted name. Those being the dragon egg, the enchanted golden apple, and the thing banner pattern. And if you ask me, one of those things is not like the others. But if you have them, feel free to show off.
Number 34. Silk Touch is a valuable enchantment to have. So valuable, in fact, that many of us don't want to waste it. Which is why shears used to be so great. See, prior to 1.9, you could enchant shears with Silk Touch, and then use that enchantment elsewhere. Meaning, if you build with a lot of glass, put Silk Touch on your shears, and instead you've got an unbreakable glass remover, which is cool while it lasted. Number 35. Crafting a netherite hoe is something of a joke, and the advancements call attention to that. But if you took the time to wear down the tool, you might notice it doesn't break the same as the others. And the reason for this is because tilling the soil is based on the server, so it doesn't display a breaking animation like the other ones. If you manage to break it, that is.
Number 36. I'll go out on a limb and say that nobody likes to be poisoned, and even fewer people like to be lied to. So with those two facts, it pains me to say that Minecraft is doing both. Because apparently the potion of poison 2 has effects that last for 22.5 seconds, so the time says 22 because it rounds down. And now you have to live with that fact. I'm sorry.
Number 37. Within the game's code, Minecraft has a few hidden messages directed to the player, and the Suspicious Stew is a key example of that. See, the logic behind this edition was for the developers to communicate that lilies of the valley are actually poisonous in real life, which is nice to know, but it's not like daisies give regeneration in real life, so the message might not always come across. Number 38. Adventure mode is an interesting concept. For instance,